What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Slaw Sports Show. I'm your host, as always, Cole Noble, aka Slaw, here for another episode of the Slaw Sports Show. And today is our final episode of our NFL season preview. So previewing the NFL season division by division. We've gone 7 straight weeks, give or take, 7 straight divisions though, and we have one more to go, including our fan favorite team here on the Slaw Sports Show, the Green Bay Packers. So today, as you can tell from the thumbnail, from the title of today's video, from if you've been keeping up with it, the last one left. Today we will be discussing the NFC North. So like I said, the Packers, Chicago Bears, Minnesota Vikings, Detroit Lions. We have a lot to talk about in this division. Some new head coaches, some new offensive coordinators, some new playmakers on offense, some teams that don't have any playmakers on offense. We'll talk about all of it, as well as some big news out of this division, some trade requests, those type of things that we have to discuss to just give an overall breakdown. And the other thing, football is back. Happy week 1 of the NFL preseason. We had 2 great games last night. And, we have some great games tonight as well on the slate. Continuing on Saturday, another game on Sunday. Rolling along, we made it to the official start of the NFL season. I'm excited. Another season is, off season has come and gone. Another season now begins. An exciting time here to be a football fan. Having football back for the first time in 6 months, it seems like. All the way back to April was the last big NFL day with the NFL draft back on the 28th. So it's time, to get back into football shape. So we have one more season preview we have to break down, 4 more teams, and then next week we will be going game by game and giving our final record prediction preview for the Slaw Sports Show, how we think each team will finish the season, which teams we have winning the divisions, which teams we have going to the playoffs, maybe a little playoff, way too early playoff prediction, how it's going to go, maybe end up with some Super Bowl champs at the end of it. That's going to be next week, and this is what we've all been building up to, the last 7 episodes, and then today is number 8 of this NFL season preview is getting ready for the start of the NFL season, a new season upon us, a lot of big things. We've talked about it ad nauseum for the last 7 weeks, all of the new changes coming to the league. We're going to wrap it up today and finally put the bow tie on the NFL offseason and our NFL season predictions, and then we'll get right into football action. So before we start today's episode and talk about this NFC North division, let's give a recap of the games we saw yesterday in the NFL. Preseason week 1 kicked off yesterday with the New England Patriots facing off against the New York Giants. We got a little bit of a look at a little bit of a look at Daniel Jones. No look at Mac Jones yesterday, but we got a little bit of a look at Daniel Jones in this new offense with Brian DeBall. A little bit of a look at Saquon Barkley, Darius Shepard as well with this offense. Darius Slayton as well with this offense. So we saw, got to see some guys. Tyquan Thornton, a rookie for the New England Patriots, had a big day yesterday. So it's good to see the rookie get into the end zone. And then we had another game yesterday. Baltimore Ravens actually moving on their now, I think, all-time record at 21 straight preseason wins dating back to 2015. So we got another win by the Baltimore Ravens against the Tennessee Titans. That game, we got to see the debut of Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty. Had a pretty decent game for when he was able to play. We saw some Kyle Phillips in that game. We saw some Treylon Burks run a lot of routes. Didn't get on the stat sheet, but we saw him run some routes out there for the Titans. We also saw some players for the Ravens that had big days. Travis Jones had a big day yesterday for the Baltimore Ravens. Also, at quarterback as well for the Ravens, Tyler Huntley had a pretty decent game. I don't know how Tyler Huntley's still a backup in this, in the National Football League right now. How no team has traded for him is beyond me. Isaiah Likely had a big game, the rookie tight end out of Coastal Carolina. So a lot of good football yesterday. It continues on today. We're going to see 2 of the teams we will be discussing in today's episode. The Detroit Lions will be facing the Atlanta Falcons today at 6 p.m. in just 2 hours as of now. Jacksonville Jaguars hosting the Cleveland Browns, and this will be the debut game of Deshaun Watson as a Cleveland Brown. It seems like he will be starting tonight at 7 p.m. And then we have Trace McSorley in the Arizona Cardinals facing off against the Cincinnati Bengals at the new Paycor Stadium, by the way. Now recently new naming rights in Cincinnati. We got a big game, New York Jets, Philadelphia Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field at 7:30 tonight. This one I think could be a little bit interesting once it starts dwindling down. We might get to see a little bit of some Joe Flacco. Where's the Joe Flacco meter? Land today on that one against Mr. Handlebar himself, Gardner Minshew for the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe we see some starters in action on that one. Maybe some Zach Wilson, maybe some Jalen Hurts. And then the nightcap tonight on Friday on NFL Network, our own Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love facing off against the Trey Lance-led San Francisco 49ers. No starters for the Packers. We'll get into that in just a little bit. The 49ers will be playing, of course, a good handful of their starters for the first couple of drives. Trey Lance is going to get a couple drives in there to start the game. So that one at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will be one to watch. And Week 1 continues tomorrow. Chiefs and Bears, Panthers at Commanders, Colts at Bills, Seahawks at Steelers, Dolphins at Buccaneers, Saints at Texans, Cowboys at Broncos, and then at 10 o'clock tomorrow night, Rams at Chargers, the two Sophie teams facing off at Sophie Stadium. And then one more game on Sunday afternoon, evening-ish, 4:25 p.m., the Minnesota Vikings, who we will be discussing today as well, against the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's the football slate for preseason Week 1. It's exciting. It's time to get into it. It's football shape. But with that being said, we still have a job to do here on the Saw Sports Show. We have 4 more teams that we have to break down today on this episode to get ready for and pretty much just finish up our season preview and get ready for our predictions that will be coming next week. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. And of course, you know who we're going to start with. We are starting with the Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers, a big season upon them, and especially a big season upon the shoulders of quarterback Aaron Rodgers, now without wide receiver Davante Adams. You know, we talked about in our very first NFL season preview episode talking about the AFC West. We talked about the Las Vegas Raiders getting Davante Adams from the Green Bay Packers star wide receiver, arguably one of the best wide receivers in the game right now. The Green Bay Packers traded him for a first-round selection and a second-round selection that they used back in April. They used the first-round pick to take Quay Walker out of Georgia. They paired both their second-round picks to move up in the second round with division rivals Minnesota Vikings to take Christian Watson. Still waiting to see Watson get some action in Green Bay. Had a little knee surgery, hasn't quite gotten the field. The rookie receiver out of North Dakota State. But that was the implication of the Davante Adams trade. The trade pretty much has now been finalized. The Raiders get Davante, the Packers get Quay Walker and Christian Watson. They also get out of a big cap hole in that big contract Davante Adams got from the Las Vegas Raiders, a deal that was offered more money from the Green Bay Packers, but he turned that one down, wanted a new change of scenery. So long, Davante. So now in this post-Davante Adams era, a lot is on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers. How is Aaron Rodgers going to adapt in this offense without his best friend, without his number one wide receiver? Will this offense look the same? Is Rodgers going to regress? Yada, yada, yada. We've heard it all off season long. This Packers offense will regress. This Packers offense will not, be at par of the last 2 13-win seasons with Matt LaFleur. Yeah. I'm not worried about this Packers offense. I'm not worried about Aaron Rodgers. I'm not worried about Matt LaFleur handling this offense. For me, this Davante Adams trade helps the Packers offense. Did no one watch the Packers offense? Time and time again, Aaron Rodgers trying to force feed the ball to Davante Adams. The last time we saw this team on the field, in the first game of the playoffs for the Green Bay Packers, the number 1 seed against the San Francisco 49ers, that offense flat out stunk. And a main part of that was because they were trying to time and time again force feed the ball to Davante Adams in that game. And also, a big stat that, comes to mind, 7-0. 7-0 under Matt LaFleur without Davante Adams is the Green Bay Packers record. I'm not worried about this Packers offense. I think Aaron Rodgers is honestly going to do a lot better at spreading the ball around, getting more players in the offense involved, making this offense more, elaborate and harder to defend, and honestly make it easier for Matt LaFleur to start scheming guys open, doing what he does best with this offensive scheme, getting them on the same page offensively with all their guys getting involved, all their guys being used collectively as a whole unit. It's going to make everything run a lot more smoothly and a lot better in Green Bay. Now, of course, with no other superstar on this offense, a lot of this is going to fall on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders, for better or for worse, this season. So we'll see what Aaron Rodgers can do with it. We'll see how, he rises up to the challenge this year without having Davante Adams, how he utilizes some of these young guys within this offense, and also some of the other old heads getting involved as well. But still, they have playmakers, they have a great quarterback, and they have a great head coach calling the shots for this Packers offense. So let's talk about, of course, this wide receiver room. That's the talk of the town. The wide receiver room in Green Bay in this post-Davante Adams era. How are they going to look? How are they going to play? All of that kind of stuff. First and foremost, we've got to talk about the new number one guy in the room, and that is going to be Allen Lazard. And Allen Lazard is seeming like he's coming along on his own as a number one receiver in this offense. I like Allen Lazard. I've always liked him in Green Bay. Thought he's been very underrated. A big, in the trenches, do-it-all type of wide receiver. A tremendous, run-blocking wide receiver. And at times, he's made plays, as a wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers. And ultimately, him being healthy, him being on the field can be productive. Last year, only played in 15 games, but still had 500 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's, been reliable in the touchdown department. 3 touchdowns. Last year made a big jump into 8 touchdowns in 2021. So he's continually progressed since coming into this Packers offense in 2018. He's continuously got better, and there's a lot of high hopes for him being the number one guy within this offense, and I feel like he can do that. I have a lot of trust and a lot of faith in Allen Lazard holding his own as the number one receiver. He's easily going to get, a bulk of the targets in Green Bay from week 1 throughout week 18. He's going to, probably be the number one guy in the receiving categories for this team this season. Behind him, of course, is going to be Rodgers' best friend, and, next man up is Rodgers' best friend in Randall Cobb. Longtime Green Bay Packer, do-it-all guy as well for the Packers. Cobb's, starting, you talk about in the X, you have Allen Lazard. In the slot, you're going to have Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb's going to be your third down slot guy. Last year, dealt with a little bit of his fair share of injuries and, missed some time last year. He's getting up there in age, been more of a, veteran, presence in the locker room and on the field for the Packers with this young core that they have in this position, in this wide receiver room. But Cobb is still going to be that reliable target day in and day out for Aaron Rodgers. When he needs to make a play, when he needs to move some sticks, he's going to look for Randall Cobb within this offense. And then, the number 3 in the Packers wide receiver room, and, probably going to be the Z wide receiver of this Packers offense will be Sammy Watkins, who came in during the offseason. A big thing tonight to look for, with the Green Bay Packers and Matt LaFleur saying he's not going to play the starters tonight at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara against the 49ers. I'm watching out for Sammy Watkins. If Sammy Watkins does not play tonight, that's going to be very telling of how he's going to be within this offense. If he does not play, it's clear they view him as a starter and view him as a lock to make the Week 1 roster. So I'm excited to see Sammy Watkins actually not play. I want to see Sammy Watkins not take the field today. I think will be very telling from this Packers offense that they try to put out tonight against the San Francisco 49ers. But Sammy Watkins, same way, dealt with his fair share of injuries. When he's on the field, he's back, hopefully with some guys that he was with in Buffalo, on the coaching staff in Green Bay. Has a little bit of connection back to his early rookie days in Buffalo. Maybe they can try to revitalize him in this offense with Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to him, and hopefully he can be the deep threat in this offense. Bank on a big Week 1 game against the Minnesota Vikings out of Sammy Watkins. Expect him to have a big game in the first game for the Packers. He's always due for one. Fantasy football fans know what Sammy Watkins can do in Week 1. So fire up the Sammy Watkins train in Week 1. So those are the top 3 guys. Now we got to talk about the rookies. The rookies are the big ones here. So we talked about Christian Watson, the second-round pick out of North Dakota State. We haven't seen much out of him. Like I said, dealing with a knee surgery. We're hoping to see him back at practice next week, is what the reports were saying, out of Green Bay. So probably not a week 2 preseason start for Christian Watson, but maybe preseason week 3. We see Watson hopefully get some action in that one. I think first and foremost, we want him back at practice. And the other guy who has absolutely captivated headlines in Green Bay all offseason long and all training camp long has been Romeo Doubs out of Nevada. The 4th-round pick out of Nevada has absolutely captured it, all of the attention in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers has had high praise about him. The local media has had high praise about him. Jair Alexander has had high praise about him going up against him in practice. He had a great practice last Friday, a week ago at Family Night. Made some big plays. He's made plays in practice against Eric Stokes, who held down the fort last year at this cornerback room in Green Bay. Romeo Doubs has really impressed a lot of people. And we'll pull up here what Aaron Rodgers had to say about Romeo Doubs once he finally arrived at training camp. So we're going to pull this up here. This from Aaron Rodgers discussing Romeo Doubs and what he has been able to do so far in this Packers wide receiver room.
The start to camp that Romeo's had?
No, it's never been too big for him. I really like the approach. He's a very humble kid, but you're starting to see the personality come out a little bit, which is fun to see. He's had a lot of opportunities, which has been great. With Sammy not practicing a couple days and obviously Christian being out, a lot of opportunities for him. He's made the most of it. I thought, it's not just the team stuff. I thought he ran good routes yesterday in the one-on-ones against Stokes. And, it's just a matter of the mental stuff. He's still making some mental mistakes, but you expect those. It's the approach, though, and his release patterns. He gets the ball with his hands. He's, every single day, you guys know, you've been watching, there's been at least one kind of wow play from him, and that's kind of rare for a young guy like that. Now, we've had some guys over the years kind of do that, but, they're all in the top 10, I think, in the Packers receiving history. So
that's what we have from Aaron Rodgers discussing Romeo Doubs. Again, rookie 4th-rounder out of Nevada. He's done some big things. You said it there, and now they're getting Sammy Watkins back at practice. This was back on August 4th. Thank you to Peter Bukowski posting that video, co-founder of The Leap and host of Locked On Packers. So appreciate that. That's what we have with this Packers wide receiver room. Maybe a little splash of Amari Rodgers here and there. Hopefully get him more involved in these special teams consistently, I think would be the big thing for Amari Rodgers if he's able to make the roster. But that's the guys we have really making the headlines at this wide receiver position. The next thing I want to discuss in Green Bay is the running back room. And of course, we know the 2 guys in the running back room in Green Bay, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So Aaron Jones, your more slasher, big play type, out of the backfield, was heavily involved in the receiving game. They're going to use him a lot in the receiving game again this year without Devontae Adams. But A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, how do they get both of those guys on the field at the same time? We didn't see much of it at Family Night last Friday in Green Bay, but you have to think Matt LaFleur is cooking something up right now to get Quadzilla and Jonesy on the field at the same time, work both guys out of the backfield. A.J. Dillon, you're more, north to south type of runner. You're big guy, in the trenches, getting the first down, getting touchdowns. That is going to be the A.J. Dillon show this season. While Aaron Jones is the more slasher, big play type of guy that they're going to rely on. Those 2 guys, I want to see how they get on the field at the same time. There's going to be a healthy dose of both of them. So fantasy football players, invest in both guys. If you can't get one, get the other. I would have to say in your fantasy football drafts coming up, I think both guys will be utilized very heavily within this offense. Tight end, that's the interesting one. You got Robert Tonyan still trying to work his way back from a torn ACL. Josiah DeGuara has made some headlines. Big dog Mercedes Lewis is still there, who's going to be involved in the running game. And maybe a little bit of some red zone action from Big Dog in Green Bay this year. But, that's the offensive weapons that Aaron Rodgers is working with. And, again, tonight we will be seeing Jordan Love in this Packers offense. Probably not any Aaron Rodgers at all until week 1. but that's what Rodgers is currently working with right now in this offense. The big thing for this offense and the big worry to me isn't the wide receivers, isn't the passing game, it's the offensive line. The offensive line, without their 2 starting tackles, David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins, how are they going to replace those guys? When are they going to get those guys back? That's the big thing. David Bakhtiari, it's no longer an ACL issue for him. It's more of just a conglomerate of, buildup of bad things in his knee that's holding him out of practice right now. I think he's still considered a hopeful, but maybe a hopeful long shot for week 1. Elton Jenkins, I believe, was placed on the PUP list, so he'll at least be out the first 4 weeks. So how do they, replace these guys? Last year we saw a lot of Josh Nijman at left tackle. We saw some Royce Newman at right tackle. The Packers went out in the draft and got 2 guys who can play multiple positions they've been working with in camp right now, and Sean Ryan and Zach Tom. And then on the inside, John Runyon, Jake Hansen at guard right now. And then at center, the center spot is the only spot that looks locked up right now in this Packers offensive line with Josh Myers. So that's my worry out of this Packers team is this offensive line. How do they shake out without Bakhtiari, and how do they shake out without Elton Jenkins? But once those 2 guys come back, this offensive line will be rock solid with 2 stars on that offensive front for Aaron Rodgers. It's just until those guys come back, and if those guys come back, how is this team going to get those guys on the field? How are they, that front 5, how will they shake out? Who's going to play where? That's the big thing they're trying to work out right now, and we're going to see a lot of different groups and, a lot of, I think, every drive we might see a different starting 5 for this Packers offense starting tonight. So that's what to watch out for up front in Green Bay. So that's the offense in Green Bay. Now let's talk about this defense. The defense is now, stacked with talent. This is going to be one of the top defenses in the National Football League. Top to bottom. Devondre Campbell last year, an All-Pro linebacker. Jair Alexander coming back in the secondary, an All-Pro cornerback. You got Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage still locking things up. That's the weakest position on this defense, is that safety position. Outside of Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage, it is a steep fall off at the safety position. But at cornerback, they have the best trio of cornerbacks in the National Football League, with Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, last year's first-round pick out of Georgia, and Russell Douglas last year had, I believe, 10 interceptions. A free agent trade, that they actually signed off the practice squad. A guy they signed off the practice squad last year in Arizona came onto that scene in that Arizona game, had a game-stealing interception. Those guys are going to be absolute, beast on the field, putting all 3 of those corners on the field at the same time. But the big thing on this defense in Green Bay is going to be Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary off the edge has already looked like a beast in camp. He already looks like a bona fide leader on this defensive line, and looks like he might be a dark horse defensive player of the year selection. Unbiasedly, as a Packers fan, I do think he is a dark horse to win the defensive player of the year award this season. But then you're adding 2 first-round picks out of Georgia in Quay Walker at linebacker and Devontae Wyatt at defensive tackle. It looks like Devontae Wyatt is going to have an interesting time getting onto the field, battling out with, depending on where they put him at defensive tackle or at defensive end. He's going to be battling out, Dean Lowry, Jerron Reed, Preston Smith, and of course Kenny Clark has his spot solidified on that defensive line. As for Quay Walker, the rookie linebacker, he looks like he will be an instant day 1 starter. The Packers will shift into more of a 2 linebacker set this year, as opposed to what they ran last year. 2 middle linebackers instead of Devondre Campbell being the lone middle linebacker. That's going to do well for this Packers defense, battling with some speed on the edge that, constantly beats them time after time. So this Packers defense under Joe Barry looks to be much more improved next season. I, for one, am excited to see them get on the field and showcase that. The big thing on the Packers team and the kryptonite of this Packers team has been their special teams. And they had an overhaul this offseason, bringing in new special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia, former interim head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. He is coming in and has, what I've read, brought an enormous presence to this Packers special teams. A huge vocal voice in practice. He's been getting after guys like Amari Rodgers, just for dropping punt, simple things like dropping punts that don't, something that doesn't need to happen on the practice field, much less on a game field, which will happen for the Green Bay Packers. So he is absolutely hammering his fists on these guys. I love to see it. Mason Crosby, he's going to look like that he's going to have an opportunity here to get the starting job as kicker again, but we'll have a little bit of competition to shake out throughout the preseason. But I think Crosby keeps a hold on his job. Pat O'Donnell came in this offseason from Chicago at punter. So they have some guys, still trying to work out some kinks with their long snapper at practice that I've been watching in Green Bay. But overall, that special teams looks like it has had a complete overhaul, which is a good thing to note as a Green Bay Packers fan. So that's the sake of the Packers. They still look like a surefire top 3 team in the NFC. Easy favorite to win the NFC North again this year, unbiasedly. So they're my team to watch to win this division in the NFC North again. The Packers are still the top dogs, still the kings on the throne in this division. Now let's talk about our next team. This team is a team I'm excited about, the Detroit Lions. I am stoked about the Detroit Lions this year and what they're able to do in under second-year head coach Motor City Dan Campbell. How does year 2 look under Dan Campbell, this new regime that came in and absolutely electrified the league last year in what was a horrible season? Turned out to be a fun and exciting season. As bad as they were in Detroit last year, you cannot help but sit there and watch every single Detroit Lions game. I mean, yeah, you're hoping for them to win their first game of the season into, week 7, but still, all of America, it seemed like we're rooting for the Detroit Lions week in and week out. They are really establishing themselves as a new America's team because, Dan Campbell is a lovable guy. He is a guy that is a likable, lovable guy as a head coach, and you really want to rally around this guy, bringing back the Detroit Lions into something competitive and something that you can have pride in. And that's something he's trying to establish back in Detroit, is the pride of the Detroit Lions and building that back up from the foundations in Detroit. So for Detroit, the big thing is quarterback Jared Goff. Seems like he's battling for his job this year in Detroit, being the quarterback of this team. The Detroit Lions are still primed with an arsenal of draft picks where they can move up at the end of the draft, or move up in the draft next year at the end of the season if they think Jared Goff's not that guy. But he has one more season to prove it. In Detroit, it seems like Dan Campbell likes Jared Goff a lot. At times he's looked great, at times he has not. So, what version of Jared Goff are we going to get in this offense will be a big thing and storyline to follow with this Lions team to determine which way they go with the future at this position. So this year is Jared Goff's year to prove himself or prove that this team needs to invest in somebody via the draft next season. Now, the guys helping him out to, prove himself this year, obviously in the passing game, let's first talk about DJ Chark, who's coming in and, at the beginning of the season will be the number 1 wide receiver of this offense, in Detroit, but also Amon-Ra St. Brown, a late breakout rookie from last year. He's going into year 2. He's another one who will be a big part of this offense, but I like DJ Chark coming in here. I thought he was, pretty decent in Jacksonville, just, dealt with some bad injuries at times, and was a forgetful player in the entire National Football League until he signed with Detroit this offseason. So I'm excited to see him back on the field. Obviously me putting him on the thumbnail shows that I'm excited about this guy in the NFC North this year. But Amon-Ra St. Brown was a guy I was super high on all the way through last year. I was excited to see his resurgence and breakout toward the end of the season. TJ Hawkinson in this offense as well. Now, the big thing for this wide receiver room is going to be the return of Jameson Williams, the first-round pick out of Alabama, tore his ACL in the National Championship back earlier this year. So we won't see Jameson Williams take the field until, I believe, around November is what the team doctors and the team has been reporting out of Detroit. So we're going to see an eventual return of Jameson Williams in this offense. He was more of a long-term guy. Easily could have been the best wide receiver in this year's draft class without that torn ACL. So they're excited to get him back when he is ready to go on this, on the field in Detroit. But also Khalif Raymond, Quintez Cephas, Josh Reynolds. They have some guys at this wide receiver room who can step up and try to help out Jared Goff a little bit in this offense with the Detroit Lions. Now, the other thing with this offense will be running back DeAndre Swift. A lot of people are, claiming DeAndre Swift might end up being the running back 1 in fantasy football this year. So a lot of praise going DeAndre Swift's way in terms of the production that he can put forth this season going into year 3. Rookie year had just over 500 yards and 8 touchdowns. Last year, 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. But also got some work, had nearly 500 yards receiving as well last year with 2 more receiving touchdowns. But there's, a lot of people in the fantasy football community this year are thinking that DeAndre Swift could be the guy to own. And you can get him in the second, maybe even, I think second round is around where he is going this year. But this guy playing behind a great offensive line, people are expecting a big year out of DeAndre Swift going into year 3. With a great front 5 in front of him, with Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Penny Sewell. They got some great guys on the front, front 5 in this Detroit Lions roster. One of the strongest front 5s on the offensive line in the National Football League, maybe the best front 5 offensive line in the National Football League. So that's why they're saying a big year might come for DeAndre Swift within this offense. Jamal Williams, being a big vocal leader. We saw him at Hard Knocks debuting this week. Had a big, riling, tear-jerking speech that he had at Hard Knocks. So that's what the offense will look like in Detroit. Building around Jared Goff, but mostly building around the future for what this team can be. Now, as for their defense, this is the interesting one to pay attention to see how these guys step up, because they haven't really added much outside of number 2 overall pick Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. Going to the Michigan team was a great story that I was ecstatic about seeing during the draft. But they have some guys on this defense that are going to have to step up this year if the Detroit Lions want to get above that win column and maybe make it a winning season this year in Detroit. Just build that next piece to the foundation of this team. So Romeo Okwara, Aleem McNeil, Michael Brockers, Derek Barnes, Alex Anzalone, Tracy Walker III, Deshaun Elliott, Will Harris, Jeff Okudah, Mike Hughes. These guys are the guys that are going to have to step up. Ifeatu Melifonwu, all these young guys, and these guys have been in Detroit for the past couple of years. They're going to have to step up this year. And Aiden Hutchinson, I'm excited to see his progression and see him on the field tonight, the second overall pick in this year's draft. I want to see these defense guys step up and show some pride and show some heart. And, I expect them to do so playing for Dan Campbell. That's what he, tries to build and try to talk into his team and, establish, the culture in this team revolves around these guys. So I'm excited to see this defense step up this year for the Detroit Lions. So that's the Lions and what we have on the forefront for them. Real quick, we will talk about the stake of tonight's game as well in Detroit, what they are, going to see and what they're going to open up against the Atlanta Falcons. Who do they put on the field? Who are they going to use tonight in tonight's game, and what to watch out for in this one. So we're going to turn it over actually to Motor City, Dan Campbell, head coach Dan Campbell, in terms of what we're going to see from the Lions starters tonight in the preseason opener against the Atlanta Falcons.
I talked to Arthur Smith. I know they're playing their starters early in this game, and I'd already thought that was the way I wanted to go too. So I'd like to get our starters some reps in this game, maybe a quarter. Because there again, you just can't mimic game speed and game intensity. And the only way to get ready for a season is to simulate that intensity. But at the same time, I want to be smart too. And so we're going to meet as a staff tomorrow night and really go through this and talk about it. But my intentions are to do that right now. I talked to Arthur Smith. I know they're playing their starters early.
So that's what we're going to see out of the starters. See a couple of the starters. There we go. See a couple of the starters from the Detroit Lions tonight in that game against the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm excited to see some of the starters get on the field in Detroit. I'm excited to see Dan Campbell leading these guys on the field and hopefully get a win to start off their 2022 season tonight in preseason week 1. So that's the Detroit Lions. Motor City Dan Campbell, excited to see these guys get on the field and get in action. So next up, we will be discussing the Chicago Bears. So the Chicago Bears, next team up on the agenda. Of course, with the Chicago Bears, you got to talk about second year of quarterback Justin Fields. So what does Justin Fields do in year 2? How does he continue to progress within this offense with new offensive coordinator Luke Getsky finally out of the Matt Nagy offense? Praise be unknown to the Chicago Bears, moving on finally from the Matt Nagy era and onto this new Matt Eberflus era. But this offense is now under the Luke Getsky era, coming from the Green Bay Packers, trying to establish a new offense centered around Justin Fields. Why you don't center your offense around your quarterback and your quarterback's strength is unknown to me. But it seems like Luke Getsky has finally gotten that logic in place in Detroit. So this team is building around Justin Fields going into year 2. I'm excited to see them finally do that with this offense and with Justin Fields. So Justin Fields in year 2 under Luke Getsky is the big storyline in Chicago. In fact, the bigger storyline in Chicago has been the wide receiver room, or lack thereof, in Chicago. So the Chicago Bears wide receivers, they're lacking. They are struggling. They are trying to find their guys. Darnell Mooney, he looks like to be easily the number 1 wide receiver within this offense, but behind him, it gets sketchy in this wide receiver room in Chicago. So they got some, just talk about the rest of the talk about the rest of the wide receiver room in Chicago. We got Byron Pringle coming over in the offseason from the Kansas City Chiefs. We got Equanimeous St. Brown coming in from the Green Bay Packers. We have a trade a couple weeks back of N'Keal Harry, who is already going to be out a couple weeks. Not surprised, from the New England Patriots. We got last year's rookie Daz Newsome, and we have this year's rookie, the 30-year-old Velus Jones Jr. That is a joke. He's not actually 30 years old, but he was one of the oldest players in this year's rookie class. But the Chicago Bears, what they're able to put out in their, first unofficial depth chart of the year. Darnell Mooney was the first-string wide receiver. Of course, we no question on that one. But the number 2 was Equanimeous St. Brown, and then the second team was Byron Pringle and Velus Jones Jr. So, Equanimeous St. Brown being your number 2 wide receiver behind Darnell Mooney. If they don't add anybody to this wide receiver room, this is going to be tough. A tough year from the Chicago Bears offense, and a tough year to even show some kind of growth if you're Justin Fields within this offense, throwing to the likes of some of these guys that they have within this offense. So hopefully they use a lot of David Montgomery in this offense, and in the running game, and maybe make that their focal point. Maybe make some running game and utilize the legs of Justin Fields a lot in this offense. But this wide receiver room is bone thin and near Jurassic level in Chicago this year. And Cole Kmet, he might have to hold his own. They also have Ryan Griffin in the tight end room to add a little bit of stability around Justin Fields within this offense. I think Darnell Mooney is going to have a great year in terms of a production standpoint. Talking about the target share that he's going to have from these guys. But that's the offense around Justin Fields. But some optimism in Chicago is Justin Fields. And here we'll bring us into this. So here we have from Jordan Schultz some great news, Bears fans. Justin Fields has blown away the staff thus far. This is 3 days ago. According to one team source he spoke with, his mechanics have improved. He's in great shape. He works at it, and he really cares. And Luke Getsky loves him. So if you want good news, Bears fans, Justin Fields looks to be that guy this year. That's something worth being happy about, right, Bears fans? Yeah. But the big thing in Chicago that we are, straight up ignoring right now, linebacker Roquan Smith requesting a trade earlier this week. One of the last, remaining members of, the star Bears defense that led them to the number 1 spot in the NFC North just a couple years back. The only player left in that era is Robert Quinn and Eddie Jackson. Those are the only two guys left. And Roquan Smith, if he is eventually on the way out in Chicago, big things are coming for this defense under Matt Eberflus. He is making this his defense in Chicago and getting his guys that he wants on this defense to be his guys. The only two players really I'm excited about, actually three players, the young guys I'm excited about on this defense is last year's rookie Jalen Johnson and the two rookies this year, Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. In the secondary, I'm excited about. If Roquan Smith stays, he's obviously an exciting player to watch on this defense. But Robert Quinn, Eddie Jackson, the two veteran long-term Bears on this defense, this defense will be tough. This entire roster, it's going to be tough for the Chicago Bears this year. I think the Chicago Bears might end up finishing as the worst team in the National Football League. I think Will Anderson is on the horizon for the Chicago Bears defense, with Matt Eberflus now as the head coach for this team. This roster is not a good roster. They're relying too much on their second-year quarterback and have not surrounded enough around him. So while Bears fans are ecstatic and ready to watch Justin Fields in year 2, I don't know what the future looks like in Chicago, and I don't know if the future is Justin Fields in Chicago. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered and not a lot of things to answer them with this year in Chicago. It's going to be a tough season ahead, but we'll see what the shakeout and what the implication is to come with this team going forward. So that's what we have in Chicago. I'm being very grim about it, but that's at the end of the day, that is what we are focusing with the Chicago Bears team. The only one that we have to look forward to in this offense is going to be Justin Fields, and depending on how much they use David Montgomery in the running game. Also, Khalil Herbert as well might get some underrated snap counts that maybe not a lot of people were expecting with this team, and what they're expecting to have come from the Chicago Bears offense this year. But Ryan Poles, he has the future in his hands in Chicago, and he's going to do some big changes, it seems like, on the way with the Chicago Bears team. So this year might be a little bit of a down year for the Chicago Bears. I don't know what's on the way in Chicago. This is honestly a team that stumps me. I don't know what they're doing right now. I don't know what they're doing 3 years from now. I don't know what the future looks like for this team. But you just, as a Bears fan, you'd have to hope that Justin Fields can prove this year that he is the future of this team and he's the one worth investing in long term. That's the only thing, honestly, I have for the Chicago Bears to discuss for this season preview, because honestly, they might be the worst team in the National Football League this season. So now we, of course, have to talk about the preseason, what is expected from the Bears. Here we have from Pro Football Talk, Bears starters will play 15 to 20 snaps in the preseason opener. So we'll get a look at Justin Fields in this Luke Getsky offense, get a look at Darnell Mooney potentially, get a look at these other wide receivers. How do they shake out? Equanimeous St. Brown, Velus Jones, maybe get on the field this week. Obviously, like I said, N'Keal Harry will be out a while, so we're not going to see him. But maybe we see some Byron Pringle as well. I don't know who we'll see in terms of this Bears offense in the preseason week 1. But the offensive line as well doesn't seem like that they're in a very good position either in Chicago. They did bring in Riley Reif in the offseason, but Cody Whitehair, Lucas Patrick, Michael Sheffield, and Tevin Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins is another guy on the trade block as well in Chicago. Not a lot is going right, and not a lot is going good for the Chicago Bears this season. So that's what to hope for if you're a Bears fan. But ultimately, bear down in Chicago this year. So the final team we have to discuss in our NFC North season preview will be the Minnesota Vikings. And of course, we have big news coming out of Minnesota today. If you have not seen already, quarterback Kirk Cousins has officially tested positive for COVID-19. Yes, we are still living in a COVID-19 world. But Vikings' new head coach, Kevin O'Connell, announced that Kirk Cousins has tested positive for COVID-19 3 hours ago, and he will miss Sunday's preseason game against the Las Vegas Raiders. So real quick, we'll talk about the implications of that. This from Underdog Football. Kevin O'Connell saying that Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond will have a 50-50 split at quarterback in preseason week 1 on Sunday. So that's what we're expecting. No Kirk Cousins, but we'll see Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond take the field at quarterback instead of Kirk Cousins. So with that being said, this is, again, Kirk Cousins. If I die, I die. Kirk Cousins not getting the vaccine. Kirk Cousins testing positive for COVID-19 for the second time in 2 years. Kirk Cousins, he will not be on the field on Sunday. But still, what is his offense going to look like under Kevin O'Connell, new head coach coming over from the Los Angeles Rams? How does Kirk Cousins look within this offense? And just ultimately, how does this offense run? We've seen a lot of mixed scenarios and a lot of mixed opinions coming out of this offense. For one, we will pull up here a guy who I believe will go absolutely nuclear within this offense is going to be Justin Jefferson. This from Pro Football Focus. Justin Jefferson talking about this offense under Kevin O'Connell. He seems to like it. Justin Jefferson said, "Now I see why Coop, as in Cooper Kupp, was wide open so many times. It's so wonderful being in this type of offense." So big things this year for Justin Jefferson. He's in that new Cooper Kupp role that we saw in the Rams team under Kevin O'Connell last year. They're going to put Justin Jefferson in that same type of role. Scheme him open and let him absolutely dominate. This is last year's Triple Crown winner at the wide receiver position, Cooper Kupp, who had a record-breaking season, went on to win Super Bowl MVP last season. Justin Jefferson is in line for a monster year this year, going into year 3 in Minnesota. I think Kirk Cousins is also in line for a big year at quarterback, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on the factor of what Kirk Cousins is going to do within this offense. I think he's going to put up enormous stats this year under Kevin O'Connell. But the big thing is an interesting quote from Dalvin Cook at running back as well. He's him saying he wants and can handle 30-plus touches per game. So how much are they going to use the run game? How much, you talk about last year's Rams, they didn't use the run game as effectively as other teams did, and as effectively, I think, as what Minnesota will want to do with Dalvin Cook in the offense this year. So that is the difference of this Kevin O'Connell offense in Los Angeles versus now in Minnesota. I think they utilize the run game a lot more with Dalvin Cook in the fold, with Alexander Madison, if they work him into the, offense as well, but also have him, in the back end as a great depth piece behind Dalvin Cook. So Dalvin Cook wants his share. Justin Jefferson will earn his share. Kirk Cousins is going to, put up his big stats. What about Adam Thielen? Adam Thielen as well is another guy that, we haven't talked about in this offense at wide receiver. He's still going to be as reliable as ever. KJ Osborne being the deep threat in that room. And then Irv Smith Jr. Coming back at tight end. I'm excited to see him back on the field. So the weapons in Minnesota under the Kevin O'Connell offense, they look ready to have a big statistical year in Minnesota this year. I'm excited to see them get to work. I'm excited to see them put up big numbers. Honestly, I think Minnesota will put up big numbers offensively in 2022, and I'm excited to see them do so under Kevin O'Connell. Now, the big thing on the offensive line is how this starter shakeup happens with this offensive line. Christian Darrisaw looks like he has, his spot solidified at left tackle, but Ezra Cleveland and Garrett Bradbury at left guard and left guard and center are the two positions worth monitoring throughout the preseason. Both those guys potentially could end up losing their jobs in the preseason. And then the rest of the offensive line, Jesse Davis and Brian O'Neill on the right side potentially might be solidified as well. So there's two spots in that left interior of the offensive line at center and at left guard are the two key position points to watch throughout the rest of the preseason. Once we get to game time for Minnesota on Sunday, watching those two guys and what they can do, that's what I'm personally watching out for as we approach week 1 in Minnesota's how this offensive line group and their starting 5 shake out. Now on defense, honestly, I don't know what to think about this defense. I mean, they have some interesting guys on here. Daniel Hunter, he could be a game wrecker on defense. Eric Kendricks can be a game wrecker on defense. They brought in Zadarius Smith, who, for 2 years, that in 2020 in Green Bay was a game wrecker. Last year in 2021, dealt with some injuries, tried to come back late in the season, had a seemed like bad breakup with the Green Bay Packers and bad blood potentially between the two. He went over to division rival Minnesota Vikings. So you got Zadarius Smith and you have Danielle Hunter off the edge. Those two guys, looking, maybe to make a little bit of havoc as a, decent, combination 1-2 punch on that defensive edge. In the secondary, Harrison Smith is reliable as ever. Lewis Seen, he's teaming up with him, first-round pick out of Georgia. And then you got Patrick Peterson, Cameron Dantzler, Andrew Booth Jr., Channon Sullivan at cornerback. I'm just not honestly blown away by this defense in Minnesota. I think it's going to be a very mid defense this year, middle of the pack. Maybe might, chip into a top 10 category this year, a top 10 category. I'm just not expecting a lot of big things out of this Minnesota Vikings defense. I'm expecting to see out of the Vikings offense this year per se. But still have some guys. Dalvin Tomlinson's great. Like I said, Danielle Hunter, Eric Kendricks, those guys are great. Patrick Peterson, he has been a great cornerback in his career. The age is starting to get, maybe a little bit of the better of him as of late. And going up, against some top wide receivers in the game this year as the number one cornerback. Will he be able to hold his own in the secondary? I want to see how they play in the secondary and on this defense. And just see how they can be. Honestly, I think they're pretty lackluster, and I'm not too excited about what this defense will do in Minnesota this year. Now, what I'm excited about is Kene Ngwanu at kick returner. He is electrifying. He's one of the most electrifying returners in the game, and he's due. He's due for some more special team touchdowns this year in Minnesota. So I, for one, am excited about him. Another thing to consider. I talked about Kevin O'Connell stating that Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond had that 50-50 split on Sunday. There's a lot of reports, and I'm honestly believe them. I don't think this backup quarterback in Week 1 is on the roster right now in Minnesota. I don't think either of these guys will impress throughout the preseason. They're going to look out and try to sign somebody in the preseason to try to bring on as the backup quarterback in Minnesota. So I don't think Mannion or Mond have what it takes to be this backup quarterback per se in this Kevin O'Connell offense for the Minnesota Vikings. So that's what we have for the Vikings, and that was our last team. We did it. 32 teams we have given previews for to give our full season preview of the 2022-2023 NFL season. Like I said, next week we'll be back on the Slaw Sports Show to discuss, and we're going to go game by game at the start of next week. I'm hoping for Wednesday we have our show next week. So Monday and Tuesday I'm going to be grinding game by game, every single game for every single team. I will create records for all 32 teams, and I will announce them live on the show. Now again, I'm hoping for next Wednesday, but don't hold me to it. So go ahead, and if you are live on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell. You will see when we go live on, at some point next week, hopefully Wednesday. But we will be giving a record prediction for all 32 teams. We will be giving divisional winners, predictions. We will be giving playoff seeding predictions, and maybe even a Super Bowl prediction next week. So big show next week. We are finally done with our NFL season previews. It's been a long, wild ride, but in the description and on our channel, you can check out all 7 other episodes of our NFL season predictions, division by division. It's been a great ride. I've loved breaking down this, all 32 teams, all these divisions has been a blast. So thank you all for joining as always. Thank you all for stopping by. If you missed any part of today's episode, it will be posted on the channel on YouTube at the Slaw Sports Show. Of course, if you like the podcast format, you can find us on any podcasting platform at the Slaw Sports Show. So whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, whatever your favorite podcasting platform is, just search the Slaw Sports Show. You can catch up on all of our previous episodes, and also, subscribe to follow along for future episodes of the Slaw Sports Show, because we're wildly and quickly approaching the start of the NFL season. Like I said, right now, week 1 of the preseason. Soon we will be into September for week 1 of the NFL season. It's an exciting time for a football fan. I'm ready to get back into it, diving headfirst into the NFL season. So thank you all for joining. Thank you all for stopping by. And until next time, peace.